In your exercise files folder, you'll notice a folder 03 variables. And inside of that folder, there is a file, variables.pl. We'll go ahead and make a copy of that now so that we don't write over the original. We'll just call it numbers.pl. And I'll go ahead and open that. And there we have numbers.pl. And we're just going to start right here and start declaring some variables. My decimal equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what this does is it declares a variable called decimal, and because of the $sign, this is a scalar variable, which means it's a one-dimensional variable, and it assigns the value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to it, which is a decimal number. Now, first of all, notice this my keyword, and what that does is it declares a variable to have a lexical scope inside the block in which you have defined it. If you hover the mouse over it here in Eclipse, you'll get a little pop-up definition. And we see this definition, a my declares the listed variables to be local lexically to the enclosing block file or eval. And so why this is important is because with strict and warnings invoked up here, if you do not declare the lexical scope of a variable, if you just say decimal equals like that, you'll get an error. And you see if I hover my mouse over here, it says global symbol requires explicit package name. And so all that means is you forgot to type my. And so you want to put my there, and that makes this lexically scoped to inside this block. And what that means is that if you have another variable on the outside here, what was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you go ahead and use this, you'll be using the one that's inside this scope and not the one outside of this scope. So if I say message decimal and run that, we'll get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I had not declared this in here and we run that, we would get the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the meaning of the my declaration. It declares the variable as being lexically scoped inside of the block that you're enclosing it in. And you just need to do that all the time. You need to always have the my there, as long as you're using strict and warnings. It's there as a discipline to make your code more reliable so that you don't end up mixing up your namespaces and having a variable that you think is one thing and turns out to be something else entirely. So this is a decimal number because we have assigned a decimal value to it. A decimal value is a sequence of numbers that does not begin with 0. If it begins with 0, it's an octal number. And so that would give us an entirely different value. I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to put in these message statements as I go along. Decimal is $decimal and octal is $octal. And I see I have a typo here. I misspelled decimal there. Okay. And now if we save this and run it, we'll see that decimal is this number and octal is this entirely different number. That's because of this leading 0 here tells us that this is an octal number, and so it assigns it in base 8, but when we print it here, this will always print in decimal, base 10, and so it's converting it, and there's the value that we get. So we're getting a different value. So just know that if you have a leading 0, you're always going to get an octal value and not a decimal value. We can also do hexadecimal, which is base 16, and that looks like this. And I'll go ahead and copy and paste here and say hex is hex. And if I run that, it looks like that. And again, it's printing it in decimal, so we get this other looking value. We'll go ahead and show you some more types of numbers. We can do binary, and that's done with a 0B. And go ahead and do a print statement for that. Binary. run it and see that we get yet another value. And the other types include a floating point number, or a number with an exponent. Scientific notation. E56 means that you would move the decimal point over 56 places to the left. And we'll go ahead and we'll print those as well. Float, float, and EXP for the scientific notation one. And I'll go ahead and save and run. And we see these values here. These are the different types of numbers available, and you'll notice that the assignment statement has the various types of numbers on the right, but on the left they all look pretty much the same because we're just assigning them to a scalar container. The value itself, the context of it, is what's determining the type. So the way that I type this is what determines the type of the number. So those are the basic number types that are available in Perl, and that is how you specify them in an assignment.